Mr. Chairman, I passed out a lot of information to the two new members on the committee. The veteran members of the committee received this information during the last biennium. If you need, additional copies, let me know, and I'll see that you get them. What I will pass out for the veteran members are the addendums to the law book for legislation that passed in the 2022 session. And then we'll be publishing a new law book when this session is complete and we have whatever changes there are to the statute. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to come before the committee and just talk a little bit about the Department of State and more specifically elections. For the benefit of the newer members, the Secretary of State's office does a lot more than just elections. In our administrative office, which is in the State House, we handle all of the campaign finance reporting. We issue the commissions that are confirmed by the Governor and Council for justices of the peace and notaries. We issue apostilles, which are certifications of notary publics in New Hampshire, primarily for overseas purposes to deal with things like adoptions. We handle a large number of administrative filings in the office, and we also tend to the Governor and Council. A member of the Secretary of State's office takes the minutes of the meetings, and we put that information up on our website. We also have Corporations Division and the Bureau of Securities located in the Annex Building, which is adjacent to the State House. Corporations registers all entities that conduct business in the state of New Hampshire, and we collect annual return filing fees for those business entities. The Bureau of Securities registers broker-dealers and individuals that deal in financial instruments. We also register financial instruments like mutual funds and things that operate in New Hampshire. Securities is a major revenue generator for the state. They collect in excess of $40 million that goes directly to the general fund. Securities, the Bureau is funded by the fines that it collects in any given year. We also, up on the state hospital grounds, is the archives building where we have the state archives and records management. In that building, we also have the Division of Vital Records, which collects information on births, deaths, marriages, divorces, adoptions, among other things. We also have a portion of our elections office up there. We commonly refer to it as the HAVA office, which stands for the Help America Vote Act. And then we have elections, which I'll primarily talk about this morning. Elections, we're responsible for the campaign finance filings, candidate filings. When individuals want to run for office, we provide the notice to voters and instructional publications, not only to voters, but also to local election officials. We do all of the ballot preparation and distribution for elections, for state and federal elections in New Hampshire. We conduct extensive election official training. We do recounts, and we certify the results of an election. And then call the newly elected legislators to show up on Organization Day, take the oath of office, and assume their duties. In 2002, the Congress passed the Help America Vote Act, which requires all states in the country to create and maintain a statewide centralized voter database. We have to have accessible voting equipment in every polling place so individuals with disabilities can vote independently and privately. Excuse me. We conduct extensive poll worker training for elections. We are also responsible for voter education, and the HAVA Act also requires that the Attorney General's office enforce the federal Help America Vote Act laws. To help accomplish all of those objectives, the state was given a significant amount of money, millions of dollars. At the time, the state chose to do what was necessary to meet the requirements of the Help America Vote Act, but the legislature also at the time created the election fund, which states that the principal amount from the federal funding and then the state matches that were required are kept in the fund. And at the present time, the Secretary of State's office is allowed to expend 1/12 of those funds in any given year to maintain the mandate of the Help America Vote Act. Currently, we have $12.8 million in that fund, and the federal government just announced that there's another $1 million available for security measures, primarily. We have received significant funds in the past, up to around $3 million, when we were going through the pandemic crisis, and we utilized those funds to conduct the elections under COVID conditions in 2020. In terms of the spending of the HAVA funds, that 1/12 that we spend in any given year is devoted to the maintenance effort of maintaining the statewide centralized voter database. That includes the staff that we have in the HAVA office that is constantly inputting data, but also checking the data to make sure that it's accurate. And we just went out to bid last year to replace the legacy centralized voter database that was put in place in 2006. So I expect by this summer, we're going to have a brand new database for voters, which will have a lot more functionality, and hopefully our local election officials will see opportunity there. It's also designed in a way that it will accept a voter portal, and I know the chair of this committee has been very interested in that, so that we can do things like accept voter registration applications that would be sent to the local supervisors of the checklist for approval, things like requesting an absentee ballot online. We will have that functionality, and we're actually looking at proposals to develop that similar to the legislation that's being proposed. The accessible voting equipment, I believe, is on its third generation now. That's the white tent that you see when you go into the polling place. Inside the tent is a tablet that is hooked up to a printer so that the voter who has a disability can go in and mark their choices on the ballot, on the tablet, and when they're done, they can push the enter button. An actual official ballot will be placed in the printer, and as it goes through, the voter's choices will be marked on the appropriate location on that ballot, so that the voter can then take the ballot and actually run it through the AccuVote machine, if that's what's being used in the polling place, as opposed to hand counting, and have their ballot treated just like any other voter in the polling place. We also, in the last election, implemented for the first time an accessible voting system for individuals with sight disabilities, so that those individuals can vote from home. They would receive their ballot by email in a similar way that a UOCAVA voter would. A UOCAVA voter is a member of our military or that's stationed overseas, or an overseas citizen that by federal statute is authorized to receive their ballots electronically. In both instances, both voters print their ballots off on a local printer In the case of the sight-impaired voter, they can actually use a program to mark their ballot with a printer, have it printed off, and then they can mail it back in to have it counted. Mr. Chair, I would invite the committee to come up to the HAVA office at some time at your convenience just to see the operation up there, how we maintain the systems. But we also have a state-of-the-art training facility that was part of the HAVA program to train local officials on the Help America Vote Act. There have been statements made, and it usually surfaces when there's a race for Secretary of State, that there was $1 million spent inappropriately for the archives edition. There was $1 million that was spent from the HAVA funds to develop the space where the elections office operates up there, along with the training facility. We were one of the last states that went through a federal audit of the HAVA funds just 2 or 3 years ago, and the result of that audit was that they confirmed that those funds were appropriately spent, and that in fact New Hampshire spending the money in the way that it did saved taxpayers quite a bit of money doing it that way. And I'm happy to share that report with you so that you have it for your records. Initiatives that we have underway at the present time are, as I mentioned, replacing the legacy voter database, which will be complete later on this year. And it will have the additional functionality that I mentioned. We're doing a lot of work right now with the next generation of voting machines. As we all know, the AccuVote machines are aging and their useful life is coming to an end, although they are good to get through a couple of more elections if we need to. We are currently testing 4 different devices manufactured by different companies. During the general election, we tested a open source software system called VotingWorks in 3 small towns, which the software worked really well, but the hardware needs a lot of work. It just wasn't ready for New Hampshire elections. So that company is going back to the drawing board, and when they come back with a better system, we will try it again. The 3 companies that are still under consideration is Dominion and ES&S, 2 very large companies that have a track record of devices that stand the test of time, will be undertaken in the Dominion device will be tested in Milford and Londonderry during the local elections coming up in the spring. The ES&S device will be tested as well in the town of Winchester. And then Clear Ballot would like to have their device tested. They just haven't had a town yet that's willing to come forward to say we'd like to test this device. But I expect at some point that will happen. We plan to continue to test the devices in upcoming elections. The Ballot Law Commission is the agency that is responsible for approving the devices, so we're giving regular reports to them, and hopefully they'll be able to make a decision on a device or a couple of devices soon. Because of the economies of scale, I mean, New Hampshire is a small market for these devices. It's not desirable to have more than 1 or 2 devices approved because it dilutes the interest of a company wanting to sell and maintain their device in New Hampshire. So we're wary of that, and we just would like to make a decision and choose the best device that makes sense for the state of New Hampshire. Electronic poll books.
Secretary,
I'm sorry.
You would, on that comment on, I think it's the EAC in Washington and approval machines and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the Election Assistance Commission also has set standards for devices that can be used for counting ballots in elections. That is part of the Ballot Law Commission, the New Hampshire Ballot Law Commission approval process, is to make sure that the devices have the approval of the EAC. The standards that are set by the EAC are also supposed to be certified by a nationally known testing laboratory, so that we know at the federal level these devices meet certain standards and that they're ready for approval at the local level.
Thank you.
Electronic poll books, which I know Senator Perkins Quokka is very interested in, is gaining in popularity. There are now 15 polling places in the state of New Hampshire that are using the devices, and those 15 polling places represent about 126,000 voters. And while the full functionality of those devices has not been approved for use in New Hampshire, the localities that are using them are realizing benefit from the fact that a voter can go into any line, whichever line is shortest at the check-in. They don't have to get in a line by alphabet. They can check in easily. If they produce their driver's license, the machine will actually read that, and all of the information needed to check them in will populate, making that process faster. And then the real benefit is at the end of the night when the polls close, they can push one keystroke, and instantly we'll have a record of the number of voters that checked in during the day, so that they don't have to go through each page of the checklist and count them up manually. And then in addition to that, the Secretary of State's office put out an RFP, and we're currently building an interface, which hopefully will be complete this year, where the information on voters that have checked in can be uploaded to the voter database, again, saving the supervisors of the checklist many hours of having to manually input that data into the system. There is additional functionality for e-poll books that we would like to utilize. We will need the cooperation of the e-poll book vendors, though, to do the work that's necessary to test and convince us that the units can be standalone without the fallback. Currently, the e-poll books have to be used in parallel with the paper checklist process, and that is just to give us the insurance that if the e-poll book fails during an election, we have a record of who has checked in and who has not checked in, so that we can continue the election without any significant delay. Another major initiative that we've been working on and did this through 2022 election cycle was a dramatically expanded training process for local election officials and poll workers. These included in-person trainings at several locations around the state. We made sure that we held multiple training sessions in every county and in all regions of the state. We have been doing more training over WebEx and online video training, which we put up on the website and YouTube, so that local election officials can attend the trainings from the comfort of their own home, in a time frame that is convenient for them as well. We've also engaged in more voter education efforts. We hired a communications director last year who was a tremendous help in getting messaging out through social media, traditional media, and we've been doing a lot more with speaking engagements generally. I don't know if you noticed on Facebook and Twitter and I believe Instagram, we were putting out election fun facts, just informational things that would help educate voters, and they were somewhat interesting in the process. We're going to engage in poll worker recruitment initiatives coming up. We have been speaking with a veterans group that is interested in encouraging veterans to participate as poll workers. Not only did they help defend our democracy, but, we would like to help them participate in actually making it run. And we're looking forward to that opportunity. We've been doing ongoing and constant work on our website, making it more user-friendly. We went through a major initiative over the last year to make it ADA accessible. So the elections portion of the website is completely accessible to individuals with disabilities and sight disabilities. And we're going to continue to enhance that. As part of that process, we did have to take down a lot of our elections content. We had a tremendous amount of information up there. We're in the process of, I'll say, remediating it so that it will be ADA accessible when we put it back up. And moving forward, any documents that we create, we're creating in that format so that an individual with a sight disability is able to read it using software on their computer. We're working on a municipal template for elections so that a municipal website is compatible with the Secretary of State's website, so that voters have an easier time finding election-related information. Our office collects 15A financial disclosure filings. We have been struggling with a vendor who we inherited when a company was sold that has just been a nightmare situation for us in a number of areas in the department, but we're probably 90% out from under that contract. We've entered into new relationships with vendors that are doing a fantastic job related to our IT needs, information technology needs. And so the financial disclosure filing software, although it's a little late for this year, is pretty much complete and should be a much better experience for those individuals that have to file 15A disclosure forms. We're also doing the same thing with our campaign finance system. The contract with the problem vendor is expiring in March. We have a new vendor in place that's ready to go. And so I would expect that the issues that especially candidates have had filing their report forms will go away very quickly, and that we should have a very good system in place for the 2024 election cycle. Post-election audits have been a big thing this year. Legislature passed a number of audits, a high-speed scanning audit of polling places for both the last primary and general elections. That process went incredibly well, and it was a good way to just affirm the results of the AccuVote machines that were used to count ballots in the municipalities that we tested. The legislature also required that we conduct 10 hand count audits of races at the top of the ticket for state representative recounts that we had to do. That was also a positive experience. The legislature also required that we collect information, that the towns actually record the number of undervotes and overvotes when they're counting ballots at the local level. And then we did the same thing with recounts that we conducted, and it was really, really useful information to have. It really tested our our resources during the election process, because we also had a record number of recounts that we were doing at the same time. There were 31 that were requested. We did 28 recounts for state representative, but we were able to get through it, and we learned a lot from that process. We had a lot more new individuals involved in the recount process, so moving forward, we're going to have a much larger pool of trained recount help, which will also be a significant benefit. Over the course of the last year, you probably read about the Voter Confidence Committee that they recently issued a report There's some good recommendations in there. I would suggest that the committee take the opportunity to read that and use it when you're considering legislation that you take up not only this year but in the future.
Mr. Secretary, I have a prime bill, so I'm going to turn it over to the vice chair.
That was good
Who
timing
will-
because I was finished.
Oh, okay. Then, just before I go, we have a number of groups that normally show up. NHMA, you want to at least stand so we can recognize you. Olivia Zink and Open Democracy. We've got League of Women Voters here. Usually we show somebody. Any other groups that are normally here that want to at least get recognized before I? All right, so you can ask your questions of the secretary, and the vice chair will start the hearing on the next bill as soon as you're finished.
Thank you. Any questions of the Secretary? Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Secretary. It's nice to see you. Start of a new year. I was just wondering, town elections are coming, and I know there's a special election coming up in Rochester. You went over some of the changes in election law that have taken place in the last year. Has your office issued any guidance to towns and cities about implementation of SB 418 and how that will work?
We have not issued the guidance yet. We have been working with the Attorney General's office on the language. We had a meeting last week where I believe there was a final draft, so that guidance will be forthcoming.
Okay, so we should expect
Yes.
it soon. Okay, and then just one follow-up, Chair, if I can.
Follow up.
And do you expect that to include some special, I guess, extra monitors or extra follow-up to sort of get feedback from election officials on how that went on Election Day?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not only will we issue the guidance, but we will be offering training, on the guidance. I'm not sure whether we'll do it in person yet, but we'll certainly take advantage of Zoom and, WebEx training.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Senator Susie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Secretary, for all of the outward-facing stuff that I think will make it a lot easier for people interacting with your office. I really, really appreciated hearing a lot of those initiatives. But I have a sort of a two-part question. They're related, and you touched on it. But the AccuVote machines, my understanding is that we had initially thought those machines could get us through the 2024 cycle, and yet recently I've heard LHS quoted on the radio saying that they can't guarantee parts and service. So I'm wondering what your plans are for those, and then if I can just ask my related question. I know you said the Ballot Law Commission is going to approve new machines soon, but does soon have to happen a little bit earlier given what LHS is saying about the machines?
I haven't heard the, recent comments out of LHS. I do know that, within the last 6 months, they have made statements that they'll be able to support the machines through 2024. Excuse me. And the issue is the availability of parts because they're not being manufactured anymore. And they've done a good job keeping the devices running. I would hope that the Ballot Law Commission may be in a position to approve a device before the 24 election cycle. But even if they do, there is going to be a transition period, for towns to make place the order, receive the machine, get the training. So, while I'm optimistic there may be a machine that is available for 2024, it may be more realistic to plan on 2026 as the election where the changeover will be made.
If I could just follow up, or 2025 for town and municipal elections. I mean,
We are on a fast track with this. So, as soon as the Ballot Law Commission is comfortable with making a choice, I'm sure they will.
thank you.
Any further questions? Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. for taking my question. During this past election, this actually happened in my race, not that, it didn't involve me directly, but if a candidate's qualifications or eligibility is challenged in the middle of an election, is there a specific procedure in the law that should be utilized in that circumstance, or is it kind of a gray area? Because I think in my case, in the Senate District 22, someone challenged, nothing to do with me, but someone challenged my primary opponent's eligibility, and this was in August, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the election. I was kind of observing quietly to see how that would turn out, but I thought, the ballot commission ultimately ruled that they don't make the constitutional determination, the decisions, or rulings of such sort. So I wasn't sure if there is a procedure in the law to address that, and if that's something that we should be really looking into for future legislation.
Challenging qualifications of a candidate is not an unusual thing. What has to be separated is it just a campaign tactic, or is there a real issue there? And so when a challenge to qualifications is made, the first place to go is the supervisors of the checklist or the board of registrars in the municipality that maintains the information for the checklist. If it looks like there is a candidate who is not qualified after that review, then the appropriate place to go is the Attorney General's office so that they can conduct an investigation on the qualifications. If a person is found not to be qualified to be a candidate in the race, then there are provisions for the candidate, vacating the candidacy, and in some situations there would be an opportunity for a party to fill a vacancy, depending on where in the process that vacancy might occur.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
I
And
know that legislative services our legislative services, our new drafter does want to get a demonstration of the current voter system database, and certainly I'm sure she'll be interested in the upcoming one also, but that'll help her in her duties. So don't, when we schedule one, just please don't forget her.
okay, very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, without ado, we'll go right to Senate Bill 47 and introduce the prime sponsor, Senator Rebecca Perkins-Quokka. And they are running late across the street. They're supposed to text me, so if I run out, don't take offense to anybody who's testifying at the time.
No offense will be taken. Nice to see you, committee members. Mr. Chair, I am here to introduce SB 47, which is to have a commission to study barriers to increase density of residential development in New Hampshire. The work of the SB 43 Commission to study barriers to increase density of land development in New Hampshire is a continuation of a prior commission which met from September 2019 to November 2020 and was curtailed due to COVID. The commission never had a chance to complete certain work, including determining minimum standards for residential development density for different housing types by considering the availability of public water and sewer infrastructure or other appropriate alternatives, accounting for the variability of environmental conditions, considering possible property tax incentives to promote residential density development, particularly workforce housing, and exploring the possible methods of enforcement of the shared community responsibility of workforce housing under RSA 674, 58 through 61. Since the time that this commission's work was curtailed, our housing crisis has grown even more acute with a shortage of over 20,000 housing units statewide, high rents and low vacancy rates, along with historically low number of homes available for purchase. The Council on Housing Stability and Regional Leadership and Coordination has recently completed a review of all state regulations affecting housing development and found that DES septic system siting and capacity requirements are far more stringent than surrounding New England states, increasing the cost of and land area required to build housing in areas lacking in water and sewer. While it is encouraging that some communities have started to think creatively about how to tackle this dual housing shortage and affordability crisis by proposing changes on the local level, There are many more communities that lack the technical know-how, capacity, and support to do so. A few statistics from the forthcoming New Hampshire Zoning Atlas highlight the current barriers to housing development created by local land use regulations. Only 34% of residential and mixed-use zoning districts area allow single-family housing on less than an acre, with fewer than 200 feet of road frontage and a maximum density of greater than 2 units per acre. Only 28% of residential mixed-use zoning districts throughout the state, representing 11% of the state's buildable area, allow duplexes on less than an acre. And only 38% of residential mixed-use zoning districts throughout the state, representing 21% of the state's buildable area, allow for 5 or more family housing units on under 2.5 acres with under 300 feet of frontage and a maximum density of greater than 2 units per acre. When you layer on top of this other land use regulations such as parking requirements, lot coverage requirements, height requirements, and setbacks, you begin to understand why local regulations can be one of the barriers to density in New Hampshire and achieving our housing goals at the state level. Specifically, we need guidance and solutions that all communities can use to help densify areas that are served by public water and sewer, as well as areas where historic concentrations of development have occurred, such as our downtowns, our villages, and our town centers. To make it easier to build new affordable housing for families, workers, and our state's aging population in areas lacking in water and sewer that are reliant on well and septic, so that these communities can continue to grow and thrive, while also retaining their rural character and protecting environmentally sensitive areas, especially those with high conservation value. The reconstitution of the commission to study barriers and increase density of residential development will help develop these solutions and guidance, and is imperative if our state is going to have sufficient, appropriately priced housing to house our workers and keep our economy growing. With that, Chair, I will take any questions.
Questions from committee members? I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I think that on page 1, line 8, you specify 4 Senate members. That
Yes.
is quite a high number of Senate members on the commission. Are you amenable to cutting that at least in half, if not down to 1?
So I am open to that. I would love for those who come after me in testimony to perhaps comment on that. But there's a new rule that at least half of our commission members need to be legislators, and there are many different stakeholders involved in housing. So the goal was more to make sure we were including the appropriate non-legislative members in the commission rather than trying to load up on legislators.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Seeing no other questions, so
All right,
we'll
thank you
call
very much.
Alan Ritz. I hope I've pronounced that near correct.
That's okay. It's my opportunity to correct, but thank you very much. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I appreciate this opportunity to speak. I'm Alan Reitz. I speak today as both a Plainfield property owner and on behalf of my employer, the Hanover Co-op Food Stores and Auto Service Centers. I support SB 47. I do so to enable others to have the same opportunity I had back in 1991. That's when my wife and I bought our small 3-bedroom home in the village of Meriden and raised our family there. Since then, we've spent our entire careers as New Hampshire workers. My wife has spent a 30-year career as a nurse treating critically ill infants and adults at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. SB 47 is a prime example of how we make sensible decisions in New Hampshire. We listen, we investigate, we act. In preparing for my testimony today, I did some listening of my own. I spoke with Chris Foreman, who has served as on the Plainfield School Board since 2005. His long experience is the sort of insight SB 47 can tap into to craft solutions tailored for our towns, both big and small. Before I got off my call with Chris, I asked him if he had a comment I might pass along to this committee. Without hesitation, he said, SB 47 is not that different from a school board meeting. The process works best when we put preconceived notions off to the side so that we can listen, study facts, and then let our community values have a say too. Last evening, I also did some investigating. I found a 2017 housing study titled Not Many Options for the People Who Are Working Here. Its authors are Jess Carson and Mary Beth Mattingly of the Carsey School of Public Policy at UNH. Carson and Mattingly provide concise observations of 2 New Hampshire counties using data, interviews, as well as land conservation trends. I include a link to their findings in my printed testimony, which I will share with you. Please note, they have changed the county names to protect the identity of local residents. Still, the New Hampshire facts speak for themselves. In closing, I have one minor suggestion of an adjustment to SB 47's commission membership, as shown on section 1, starting on line 6. I believe the commission should also include a housing research expert from the Carsey School of Public Policy. The team there is among the best in the nation. And Professor Carson happens to be a lifelong Granite Stater with 3 degrees from UNH. Your careful consideration and support of SB 47 is the action New Hampshire needs, because using homegrown solutions is the way we fix problems and grow opportunities around here. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the last person I have on my list is Ben Frost. Good to see you again, Ben.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It is a delight to see you again and to be before your committee once more. My name is Ben Frost. I'm the Deputy Executive Director and Chief Legal Officer at New Hampshire Housing, and I'm here to express our very strong support for this legislation. New Hampshire Housing was represented on the prior commission, and I served on that and actually served as the clerk of the commission. And I can tell you that in addition to the excellent introduction to her bill by Senator Perkins Quokka, there's one particular detail of the work that that commission sought to do but was unable to do was an examination, as she said, of DES's septic standards. At the commission's meeting in February of 2020, we received a report presentation by Rob Tardif, who I believe his title was Administrator of the Subsurface Bureau at the Department of Environmental Services. And what he said in that presentation was that there was a study done by DES that indicated that the lot sizing for septic systems was too large. That was a study that was done by DES in 2002, 21 years ago. Those standards have not changed. The lot sizing is still too large, according to DES's own study. This has an impact on the development capacity of land, the density that can be achieved in subdivisions, and it influences what the information that is available for municipal boards. So this is something that I think is really important for a new commission to be able to study. There are, in addition to that, I think there are really important developments that this commission would provide a forum for discussion, and that is one of them is a project that New Hampshire Housing is involved with in collaboration with the Office of Planning and Development, and a project that's being led by the Center for Ethics and Society at St. Anselm College, and this is the New Hampshire Zoning Atlas, which will provide, when it is launched very soon, will provide an online extraordinarily deep database of all zoning in every community in the state that will be able to be analyzed both visually using mapping, but also statistically using the, I think, 450,000 data points that are in that database supporting the project. This is something that we've been working on with St. Anselm College for the past year, roughly, and I'm really gratified to see it coming to bear. That sort of information that will become available to municipalities and to people who have an interest in this stuff will be really important for this commission to have available to it. And as Alan Reitz said, the point of this really is to get information out, objective, clear information out to municipal boards to help dispel myths and, as he said, to eliminate and set aside preconceived notions of what is or what should be. So I strongly support this, this commission, this legislation, and urge you to pass it. Be happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's all the people that I have that asked to speak. I don't know that anyone else came up to the table while I was up here. There are 2 additional people who did sign in and support, one from the Nature Conservancy, one from the Forest Society, again, both in support. Without that, unless the committee members have anything, we will call this hearing closed, and we'll look out in the hall to see if the prime sponsor of our next bill is here. Oh, he is.
Apologize.
So without ado, we will,
I know, we had to fix ours too.
well, I'm going to insert myself in here. So we're going to open the hearing on Senate Bill 63 and introduce the prime sponsor, Senator Avard.
63. All right.
63.
That was a good year, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, because I was born in 63. Let's see. So for the record, I'm Senator Kevin Avard. I am the prime sponsor of this bill. I represent District 12. And I'm presenting this bill on behalf of one of my constituents who, I'm losing my chairman. Keep going, all right.
Just like I was here.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill basically is enabling legislation which municipalities can choose to adopt. It allows a tax credit for qualified private community property owners. Senator Carson proposed this bill last year. Usually, there are about 55 in older communities, and the roads that are considered to be private roads. The unit, okay, my talking point is a little different, but the unit owners are responsible for the use of these roads. And due to the low standards that are required for the completion of these roads, they tend to fail very quickly. The task of repairing the roads falls upon the people that live in the community, and sometimes these roads are used by locals as a cut-through to get to another place. The unit owners are already paying for the maintenance of the town roads in their property taxes. The additional costs have become a burden to many, and that's why we have this bill. The costs are not just for repairing the roads, they're also for plowing and streetlights and general maintenance. And these are services that traditionally homeowners receive from the municipalities through the tax dollars. Essentially, the private road unit owners are paying, in their minds, twice. And that is the spirit of this bill. And like I said, Senator Carson had this last year. I'm not really sure why it didn't pass, but it sounds like a good idea for at least enabling legislation, and that's why I'm presenting it to you this day. And so with that, take any questions?
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, Senator, thank you very much.
Wonderful. I love this. Beautiful.
All right.
I can get back to committee. All right. Enjoy the rest of your days.
Sharon Harrison?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much for hearing me today. My name is Sharon Harrison. I'm a resident and president of a 55 and older private community with private roads. We are actually here in Concord. And it is a burden to be taxed at full rate and maintain our roads, which in 6 years from now are going to need to be resurfaced. We maintain our lights, we maintain our plowing. The city of Concord goes down the city street that abuts half of our units, and picks up leaves on the left-hand side of the road, but not on our side of the road, because we are a private community. So this would at least enable us to go negotiate with the city for some relief, even if it's just picking up leaves. That's how greatly we are ignored as a private community. So I just wanted to put that out there. And in talking to the city assessors, have asked if there's any kind of benefit taken into the fact that we live on private roads, and get a little chagrined look, and then the answer is no. So this would help us go fight that. Thank you very much.
Questions from the committee members? Seeing, excuse me, seeing none, thank you very much, Sharon. The next on the list is Ms. Heck, NHMA.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Catherine Heck, representing the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and we're here to express our opposition, which I know is not going to be a popular position in this room today, and share our concerns about SB 63. Last session and prior, we spent many hours with the New Hampshire Taxpayers Private Road Alliance, and again this year, both this fall and as recently as Friday, to discuss with them this legislation, how the bill is constructed, and some legal and technical defects with the bill. So we do appreciate that it's enabling legislation for municipalities. However, as I said, there's some legal and technical issues that we tried to resolve, and those adjustments did not come forward in any reiteration in this new language. So it is the identical bill filed from last year. So we agree that state law does not define a private road. That is currently not in statute. However, municipalities adopt local standards through their land use boards and their building permit processes. So as far as the assessment's concerned, we also understand that assessments are based on the market value of a home, whether that be positive or negative for these landowners and homeowners on private roads and private communities. The market will bear what it will bear, and the assessors do take into account all those considerations. So I think that's important because taxation has to be fair, reasonable, and proportional. As we look into the legislation, starting on line 5, when it defines a qualified private community, it's of note that currently all improvements to any private land is borne by the taxpayer in New Hampshire. So septics, if you have a septic tank, if you have a well, if you have a 600-foot driveway that needs repair and maintenance, you are responsible to take care of that yourself. In addition, we have what's called village districts, or taxing entities, that if a subset of a municipality already receives a service like water and sewer, it pays for it separately, proportionally, and the rest of the taxpayers in the community are not taxed for that service. Additionally, we might see many of our smaller communities, or perhaps bigger ones, have streetlights, maybe in a downtown or some highly populated areas, but not in other areas. And of course, that is all taken into account in the assessment, for example. So as we continue to go through the bill, again, we do appreciate that they offered enabling legislation. However, it's of note that in the New Hampshire tax process, a community has to have an exact fixed dollar amount to report on the MS1 form on September 1st with any credit that's due in order to set the tax rate. As this bill proposes, the credit shall be equal to the sum of what the city or town reasonably determines it would cost to provide services for removal of snow and ice on private land, lighting of roads and streets, collection of leaves and recyclables, repair and maintenance of roads and streets, and for water and sewer repair. So currently, what would have to have happened is a fixed amount would have to be adopted by the legislative body and then readopted potentially yearly to account for inflation, changes in costs, because it has to be a fixed dollar amount. Fixed dollar amount credits, the positives and negatives are that they're based, it's a set dollar amount, so regardless of your property value, whether it be high or low, you're getting the same amount. So that would go back to New Hampshire, the Constitution, that we have to be taxed reasonably and proportionally because we can't use percentages, and percentages are the only way that this might work in practice, in our opinion, our legal opinion. Additionally, highways, under the general rule, so this conflicts with another statute, RSA 23159, municipalities cannot spend public funds to maintain public roads or driveways. In fact, that any maintenance done by the municipality must be incurred by the landowner on those. That is from Clapp versus Jaffrey, 1952. So unfortunately, the town may only maintain Class 4 and 5 highways. So private roads would not be a consideration. So that law would have to be altered or changed so it doesn't conflict with this proposed legislation. Some other considerations about reasonably determining costs, with that, there's no definition of who that would fall under, whether most likely the governing body or assessors, but the legislative body through the annual vote, of course, can amend those amounts because it's enabling legislation. So then I think there might be legal challenges if someone disagrees on the floor of town meeting, perhaps, with the amounts proposed versus the amounts adopted based on people's feelings of what real costs happen to be. So the other question that comes up that we're concerned with is how would this credit be apportioned within a larger community where there's different units, different sizes, different numbers of parking spaces, because again, it would be a fixed dollar amount and that we would go back into the circle of fair, reasonable, and proportional with taxation. So unfortunately, this bill raises a lot of questions with implementation. We have, again, worked very hard to talk to this alliance about some of these issues and wording. Generally, the New Hampshire Municipal Association opposes new and expanded credits, even when they're enabling, because credits and exemptions redistribute the tax burden to the rest of the population, and the assessment process is supposed to take all this into account. So I thank you very much for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Questions from committee members? Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, the real estate that's held by private communities in the form of parks or roads and such, that's all taxed by the town as well and paid for by the community group generally?
Or individual taxpayers, depending how their individual structured. Correct. Yes, Senator.
Thank you.
Senators.
Just a real quick one. Could you restate the statute that this conflicts with regarding roads? I just didn't pick it up.
Sure. I'm sorry. RSA 231:59.
50. Thank you.
And of course, generally, public funds cannot be used for a private purpose. I mean, that's already in statute as well, codified. That specifically deals with roads.
Additional questions? Seeing none? Oh,
No?
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. On page 1, lines 12 to 17, I'm just wondering if you have any opinion on this. This excludes apartment complexes. I understand generally that's one owner, or one ownership group, as opposed to many. But is there any, do you have any comment on that, or?
I think that could again be legally challenged because it would be a different standard for a similar condition. But I did not draft or craft this legislation, so I don't understand the legislative intent behind that. I apologize, Senator Addis.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. for your time.
And last on my list here is Judy. I'll let you, Bashan.
Judy Bastian, yes. Good morning.
Just before you testify,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't get my name on the list before.
okay, there's a copy of the list over there. You can add it to that
Okay.
while she's testifying. Yes?
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am here in support of Senate Bill 63, sorry. I'm Judy Bastian, and I live in Laconia, and I do live in a subdivision called Country Club Shores. This subdivision is not a gated community. It consists of 18 single-family homes, And I understand everything that Ms. Heck said about costs and who pays for driveways and so on. But let me tell you what our experience is. In this subdivision, we are in the confines of the city of Laconia. We have a contract with a private company for trash collection, for plowing, for our street maintenance, for our entire sewer system pumping station. That is the infrastructure of the sewer system. That does not include the storage in our private homes. We pay for that individually. The residents on the street next to us, which is Elm Street, they have all these services as well, but they do not pay separately for them. We also have one street light at the end of our street, and we pay the cost of that as well. Part of the property taxes for all these homes to Laconia does include in their budget municipal services. And someone, I think last year when I testified, was talking about fire and police and schools. Fire, police, and schools are available to us. They are available at no extra cost. In fact, the fire department does come through occasionally. They bring their huge ladder truck, go down around and make sure they can access our area if needed. Police, same thing. Schools, I don't have any young children in the school system, but if I did, we would be able to send them to local schools at no additional cost. Unlike the trash collection, unlike leaf pickup, unlike street maintenance and all the others. Our costs in 2022 are clearly definable. Our sewer water maintenance and infrastructure cost and the lighting of our street, it was a little over $15,000 for 2022. We also had to do some street repair. Water does a huge damage on roadways, and it did on our street. So we contracted with a private company to come in and make repairs, not repave the street. The repairs were an extra expense of $21,385. These costs totaled well over $36,000. I knew when we moved there that we were moving to a community that had a private street. I knew that we would be involved with paying an association fee. What I didn't think about was the fact that some of these things that we are paying for to the city as well, but we do not benefit in that way. These costs are definable. I know Catherine was talking, Ms. Heck was talking about defining costs. Well, they are definable. The city knows what their trash collection costs are. They know what their sewer costs are for infrastructure and street repair. We are aware that Laconia, like many, has a road acceptance process. Residents can ask that the city take over their city street, their private street, to become public. Board members, and I am on the board for our community, we have inquired about the process and the cost. We found it could be over 6 figures just to bring the street in compliance with Laconia's roadway requirements. So as a result of that high cost, no action's been taken for us to proceed with road acceptance. Passage of Senate Bill 63 would provide enabling legislation, non-mandatory, to allow municipalities to offer tax credits to residents in communities such as ours, and thus recognizing the fact that a private street resident is paying twice for some of the municipal services. And with that, I say we support it as a community. We can do the math and say 18 homes spending over $36,000. It's a lot of money. When you also consider forgetting the street needed its maintenance, just our routine going on, 15,000, you're talking about 900 to 1,000 per year for costs that a few blocks up, people are not paying extra for. And
Questions?
that's mine.
Oh, questions from the committee? Senator.
Thank you. When was your community built?
2007 it was completed.
So when the community was built, was there a process by which, and I'm fairly sure there was, but by which the developer went to the town or the city of Laconia and said, Laconia said, these are the standards by which you must build your private road. And my question is, why would that not now be in compliance? You couldn't just deed it over.
I'd like to be able to answer your question, but I cannot. First off, we've only lived there 5 years. Secondly, from what I understand, Laconia would come in and take a look at it and determine whether or not you're in compliance. But that's a cost, just to apply and have them come in and make that determination. And I don't believe, I believe what I heard, I wasn't on the board at the time, the board looked at that process. I believe that they found that they didn't want to pursue this unless the residents, 18 home residents, were sure that they wanted to pursue it, because you've got to lay out a cost just to find out. So I'm sorry, I can't really answer the question.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. I'm just asking for a ballpark, but if this were to become law and then adopted by your community, what do you estimate the tax credit would be?
I think that's a great question. I can tell you what we had for usual expenses, forgetting about, as I said, the road repair that we were faced with, the 15,000. So if you say 800 or 900, I would say probably the residents, at least in our little community, would agree with, even if it was 500. And as far as defining what it could be, the budget for Laconia is 5 million, I don't know. And what percentage of that budget is spent for trash pickup and so on and so on. And that number could be developed to provide some sort of recognition, maybe not offset the total cost, just recognition of us paying twice. Let's be fair. Thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know your name yet, but you come on up.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and committee members. Thank you for having this hearing today on SB 63. I am actually the secretary of the New Hampshire Private Road Association. We just switched over a lot of our leadership. We have a new president, a new secretary, treasurer, everything. So we were sort of on our back foot to begin with, because we just sort of swapped all that stuff over. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself. I moved to New Hampshire about 5 years ago. I bought a nice little house just over the border from Massachusetts in Ringe. In 5 years, my property taxes have nearly doubled. My house value went from $109,000, which I knew was a pretty low figure. It got reassessed to $179,000. Now, I live on a private road. There's only 4 houses on my road. It's a dead-end street. But all the kids from the elementary school cut through and down our road. They come with their parents, come walking down our road. Cars pull into our road all the time. Because even though it's a dead end, it goes right to the playground for the elementary school. So not only do we get multiple cars pulling onto our road, we also happen to be right next to the public library. And if people don't know where the entrance is, they pull onto the entrance of our road, turn around, drive around. And everybody here knows that the entrance to a road is obviously the most damaged part of a road. When 2 roads connect, that's where road damage happens, because you're trying to mesh 2 different roads. Now, the biggest problem that I've found since I've lived in the town is I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I get a property discount on my property tax because I'm a veteran. I'm still paying a full property tax. We don't get our road plowed. Our road itself has to come together. We have to get everybody on that road on board with one plow person, one sanding person, one person that's going to repair the road. And I'm sure everybody sitting at this committee knows just how fun it is to try and get everybody that has different opinions to agree on something. Now, why do people that live on private roads? Now, the biggest problem is these cities and towns, they do this intentionally. Okay, they sign these contracts with these contractors to build these houses. They don't hold them to the town standards for these roads. So when they're building these houses out, these towns aren't holding these contractors to the standard that the town wants for their public roads. So when the contractor's done and they sell the houses, the town says, well, it's not up to our standards. We knew that when we signed the, the deal with these contractors to build these houses. We're going to name it a private road, but we still are going to charge you a full tax rate, and you're going to be responsible for everything that happens on that road. That's how these things are happening. There's over 100 roads in Ringe alone that are listed as private. Every single house on those roads are paying full property taxes, no discounts, and they get no services. Now, our town doesn't have town water, town sewer. Everybody's got their own septic systems. Everybody's got their own wells, okay? So that's not even the biggest problem here. If I can't get everybody on my road to agree on somebody to plow, the person at the end of the road decides, you know what, I'm not going to pay. Well, the rest of us still need to get out and get to work, okay? So we still have to pay to get it plowed. Never mind the fact that, what if there's a fire or somebody needs an ambulance and our road's not getting plowed? How are they supposed to come and save us? We get those services. Okay, the police, the fire, EMS, they come to our houses and they respond. Why doesn't the highway departments? Why don't they take care of our roads? Why are we allowing these communities to allow these contractors to build these houses, new constructions, not holding them to a certain code of their public roads? Well, I can tell you exactly why. Because they know once the contractor's done and they know that road's not going to be up to their public codes, they're still going to be able to charge us the same tax rate. It's not like they're going to have to give us a break or anything. So the contractor's done, he sells the house, the town still gets a full rate, and what does the homeowner get? A bunch of headache, because now they have to figure out how to get the road, and this is all out-of-pocket stuff. So not only did my tax rate almost double in 5 years, just on property taxes, I still have to get together with 4 other households and convince them this is the best. We have to bring people in and find out who's got the best deal for plowing. Is this plow guy even good? Is he even going to show up? These are concerns that people on private roads have to deal with. And the towns, they're doing it on purpose because they know there's no consequences for it. I don't understand how this is happening and how it still happens. They openly put these bids out to contractors.
Jason,
Yes.
we're starting to
I'm
repeat.
sorry. I'm done.
You know,
I'm done. Thank you very much for
when
listening.
you started into the third time,
Yes,
wanted
I
to
know.
say something.
I apologize.
Okay, any questions for Jason? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We did have 5 other people that signed up. We had, I guess, 6 other people. 5 from NHCLF, all in support to not rush to speak. And we had George Mortram that signed up, didn't indicate whether he was speaking or not. Pardon?
I'm George Marshall. You want me to start?
You didn't say you wanted to speak. Did you want to speak?
My name is George Marshall. I'm the new president of the Alliance. And I got to tell you, I'm very discouraged. I've only been the president since November. I'm highly educated, but I never seen anything like this in my life. Okay? I got a call. Before I get off on a tangent here, I'm a retired general contractor builder, so I know a lot about construction. At times I worked for the second largest construction company in the country, Whiting Turner Contracting. I've done multi-million-dollar jobs, all right? So I'm going to just get into this here. I want to give you a little bit of my background. Dear committee members, well, the time has come for you to do your part in this fight for our rights.
George, if you've got that typed up, then you can give it to the committee and it will be circulated. I would rather you speak to us, not read to us, because we can read, so just speak to what you want to tell us. Don't
Well, it's
read
just
it.
going to read this right there. If you
Well,
don't want me to
that's
read it,
What I don't want you to read, I want you to hand it to the clerk, and she will provide it to all of us. What I want you to do is summarize it in your testimony to me.
all right, summarization is, I moved up from Londonderry, 1977, to Molten Borough, okay? And with my trucks, I started plowing the town roads and stuff. We used to do the driveways and the roads. Now, as time went on, they dropped plowing the driveways, which I can understand. So we was just doing the roads. Now, I went and I purchased some property in the 80s on Hermit Cove Road. And my stipulation was that I did not have to be in an association. I don't want to have anybody taking care of my needs if they're down in Florida and I'm up here. And so I had situations, and I didn't want to be in a homeowners association. So at the time, Preferred Properties are the ones that sold me the property, and they said that I did not have to be in a homeowners association. Well, that was great. As time went on, they turned around and took my road and renamed it and put private road after it. And they got signage up saying, you know, no trespassing, members and guests only. There's no gate across the road, so everybody and his brother drives in there. And now when you, just as you pass my home, I'm 440 feet away from where the mailboxes are, a new cluster they put in. As a contractor, I had a big mailbox. They trashed it. I don't know what they did with it. Never gave it to me. But right after my property is where Hermit Cove Association started, okay? Now, over the years, they moved the sign right up to where the mailboxes are. And it's private road designation now. Now, I have trucks going by because down in the Hermit Cove Association, they're doing multiple construction down there. They're building like there's no tomorrow. I don't know where they're getting the money for this, today's economy, but they're building constantly. I watched a Caterpillar 325 come down the road.
We need to get to the content of the bill.
Yeah. The problem with this bill is, you know, that I can see is the two situations. In a conversation with Catherine Heck, she told me the bill was dead on arrival here, which was unbelievable.
That's
won't
not
get
the
into that.
content of the bill. Content of the bill, please.
Yeah. So she told me the bill was dead on arrival. I said, okay. The problem with the bill and the situation that's going on here is this two situations. South of Concord is one situation. North of Concord is altogether different situation. And I think the bill should be passed, and then we can make an amendment to straighten out the north and south problems. You're in such a hurry. I'm totally disgusted with this whole operation, I'll tell you right now. But as president, I'm going to be making some changes. And I'm a 100% service-connected veteran Marine Corps. I've been shot at and everything. And I'm fed up with the process that's going on.
George, it is not a time that you're supposed to lecture this committee. If you have information, we'd be glad to hear it. If you are finished.
I just give you my,
And
like I said,
senators,
I'm
do
a
you
new
have
kid
any
on the
questions
block,
from
you know?
George?
And I don't like what's going on. You already had this bill buried, DOA, before we even came here. 2 days' notice. How in the world can I get together a group of people to come down here and voice their opinion with a 2-day notice?
George, thank you for your testimony.
Yeah, right.
Okay, seeing that, any other testimony? All right, thank you. Is there any senator who wants to go into executive session? We have a motion and a second to go in executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye? All right. From the things that I've seen from the senators here, I don't know that we're ready to exec 63, but we may be ready to exec 47. We'll start with 47, and if I'm incorrect on the other one, then we'll do it. As I asked Senator Perkins Quokka about how many senators, if she still wants 8, I would suggest 2 and 6, but I want to go back and look at what we signed that says that we have to have legislatures to equal the number of other people, because that just doesn't make sense.
It's either House Bill 1459 or 1469, Mr. Chairman. Because I did look at it myself, I was concerned, and yeah, we did look at
1459
that.
or 1469.
It's causing a lot of problems. It's-
All right. Well,
It's a House
even
bill.
with that,
To be
Senator Perkins Quokka, did you want to offer an amendment to your bill?
Sure. I mean, I would be very open to a committee amendment where we reallocated the legislative members to 2 senators and 6 representatives if
Not
you
yet.
didn't.
but
Okay, can I move
I'm just
on
asking
to-
her the questions
Okay.
first. Okay, so do I have an ought to pass motion?
I move out to pass?
Senator Perkins Quokka moves ought to pass.
Second.
Senator Susie seconds that. And then we're open to amendment.
Yep, I can propose an amendment where on page 1, line 8, we change 4 members of the Senate to 2 members of the Senate. And Chairman, I think, yeah, we might need to change the numbers that follow. So it would be 2 members of the Senate, one of whom shall serve on the Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee, and one of whom shall serve on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. And then on line 11, I would move for committee amendment to change 4 members of the House of Representatives to 6 members of the House of Representatives, 3 of whom shall serve on municipal and county government, and 3 of whom shall serve on the Environment and Agriculture Committee.
Do you want to make all 3 from, of the 6? Or you want to leave it 2 and 2 and let them pick a person for the other one? Because that would allow, somebody, well,
Sure,
you're amenable to that?
I'm amenable
Okay,
to that.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we can call that the wild card position, maybe
Sure.
just 2 at the speaker's discretion.
Leave 2 to
If
the
we don't
speakers.
change it, it stays 2 and 2, and then they have to pick 4, so.
2,
Okay.
do we 2, 2, and
pick
then
6.
2
2
open?
for them to pick. Sure, that sounds great. Thank you for the suggestion.
Any other comments on?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
line 19, 20, 21. One person to represent the builder, realtor, and business interests. I'm less concerned about the business interest, but realtor and builders do not have all their interests in common. And I would suggest perhaps splitting that out. I don't think if you're going to 6 people in the house, I don't think that we're still at 50%. So that I would suggest perhaps making that change.
Okay, so if we did, so your proposal, Senator Murphy, would be, in other words, to add another person, we could change G to read 2 people to represent that community, and then we would be 8 legislators and 8.
And then you'd be 8 and 8,
Okay?
which I think is where you are now when you walked in the room anyway.
Appointed by,
1, 2.
Well, if we
if
had,
you're adding the person.
if you had one,
Are you having them
6,
both appointed
7.
by
if you
business
had
industry or?
one person to represent builder interest from the New Hampshire Home Builders Association, one person to represent realtor interest from the New Hampshire Association of Realtors. And like I said, I'm less concerned about the business interest. You could say
The only
builder,
reason I'm trying to be specific is that if we're gonna pass this amendment, the committee clerk needs to be able to give the legislative services people the exact language that we
yes,
passed.
Mr. Chairman. I would say one person to represent builder interest represented by the New Hampshire Homebuilders Association, and one person to represent realtor and business interest chosen jointly by.
Okay.
Or I'd be okay with stripping out the business and interest association completely.
Yeah, because I haven't had a chance to talk to them, would you guys be open to just changing it G to read 2 people to represent those communities so that they could make that decision? I totally understand your point, Senator. I'd wanna, before I broke them up according to interest, maybe just.
I know that would be simpler, and I
Yeah.
guess at the end of the day, I'd be okay with it. Senator, I'm just, realtors, I share your concern over the housing issue in the state.
Okay.
Absolutely. I just, realtors sometimes benefit by having a little bit of a housing shortage, is the truth. And builders do not.
Builders do not.
So
Okay.
that's why I was looking to split those up.
Yep, I hear your point. Did you have a suggestion?
No, I just
No.
need to go to a
Needs to
meeting.
go. Okay. Well, Senator Susie needs to go. If you guys are open to doing 2 people, I'm comfortable with that. Otherwise, I think I can touch base
Okay,
with
so
folks.
we change the 1 to 2, leave the rest of the verbiage same for the amendment. All those, any further comments on the amendment? No? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And on the bill as amended, any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do I have a motion for consent?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor of putting the bill on consent, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It'll be on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
She'll take it out.
Before we close on Senate Bill, can I just raise one issue with Senate Bill 63? Not to vote on it.
I would rather you, I, and Senator Murphy have a caucus on Senate Bill 63 before we go too far. Okay?
Amen.
And we're out of executive session, and our business of the day being completed, we are adjourned. I'm gonna come back and pick up this mess, Trish, after, because I gotta get